come up. And yeah, we keep redecorating in here. Do you like it, Kyle? You see this?
Yeah, we had a feeling that this was going to greet us as we walked in the door.
Oh,
Yeah, we had a feeling this would happen.
Yeah, what's the name of it? Do you remember?
It's the Bob Williams Award.
For fiscal responsibility. Congratulations, Ann. I mean, what an honor to be there around legislators across the country. The former Prime Minister of the UK was there. The great Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick from Texas. I mean, so many people from across the country. Hugh Hewitt, who's a fair journalist, and from the Salem Media Network, who's doing a great job. Just to be there as they honored you with the Bob Williams Fiscal Responsibility Award. And Michigan has, never won this before. And these legislators from all over the country are coming up to me and Ann and saying, how did you get Governor Whitmer to cut so much waste, fraud, and abuse? And how did you get Governor Whitmer to sign no tax on tips, overtime, and Social Security? I mean, these legislators from Wisconsin came away inspired and said, we're going to try to do that in our state so we can amplify the effects of President Trump's working families tax cut. And they're states with Republican control of everything where they don't cut the waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, the 2,000 ghost employees, you look at all the wasteful spending, and I look at that and say, we cut $800 million of waste, fraud, and abuse permanently from departments, and we dedicated it all to roads. But then, what the House Appropriations Committee did today, I mean, you might win a second consecutive Bob Williams Fiscal Responsibility Award. Just a beautiful bust of Thomas Jefferson. We'll probably have to come with two next year, Ann, because Ann and her committee did an incredible job of cutting another, I believe it was $644 million of additional waste, fraud, and abuse in government. And remember, when we came up with the $5 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse that we wanted to cut, we talked a lot about how the ghost employees and all the wasteful grants on the pork spending and the economic development money, all of that, at the end of the year, the Democrats would put into slush funds. And those slush funds started to total $6 billion, okay? Now, when we said there was $5 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse, about $2.5 billion of that $6 billion was from, of the $5 billion was from the slush funds. So you look at the $6 billion, we estimated about $2.5 billion of that was waste, fraud, and abuse. Well, now the Democrats are trying to shove another, it was $2.7 billion of slush fund money through this work project scheme, which is something that really has taken off under Governor Whitmer's administration. If you talk to people like Tim Kelly and Nancy Jenkins Arno that were here in the past, this was a much less used process. But now the Democrats under Whitmer have accumulated $6 billion in these slush funds, and they were attempting to put more into the slush funds. And what a great job. You saw a unified Republican caucus there coming together and blocking $644 million of pork spending. Pork and waste, fraud, and abuse, and all kinds of things. It was incredible to see. Now, I will caution you, not everything that the Appropriations Committee cut was waste, fraud, and abuse, okay? There are some valid things that were cut. But I'll explain to you that the way this works, those were tied to waste, fraud, and abuse, okay? So I'll give you an example. Something that the committee did, I thought they did a great job, was they cut this Make It in Michigan Competitiveness Fund. Now this was, let's see, it was $158 million roughly that they cut, all right? Now there is a good project on there. There was this $40 million for Hemlock Semiconductor, Okay, that's a good project. But the question is, should you have to spend $158 million to get the $40 million? No, we reject it, and then we go and we use the existing money that the Whitmer administration has. It's about $50 million of other work projected money that they can then spend to fund Hemlock Semiconductor, and then they will get their match through the CHIPS Act. So I give them a lot of credit for that. But you look at some of these other projects, the electric battery projects, the hydrogen projects, the $10 million they wanted for the Michigan Climate Investment Fund, the $1 million they wanted for EcoWorks. You start going through all this and you say, why should we have to give $10 million to the Michigan Climate Investment Fund just to do this good project with Hemlock Semiconductor? No, we're not doing that. We're cutting this fund, and then we'll renegotiate the deal. The Whitmer administration has $50 million work projected. They can spend that on the $40 million for Hemlock Semiconductor, and they would have my endorsement to do that. I thought that was a great shot across the bow. I know Ann's been working on this for 6 years, so it's really incredible. But, you know, I go through this and you see, I think it was about $165 million roughly of pork spending from the Democrat trifecta. Something we've talked about a lot here, all the pork that they shoved in that budget in the middle of the night. It didn't go through heat. Nobody knew what it was. They passed it in the middle of the night, right before the vote, and we cut all of that. And so now that will go into the general fund. There's going to be conversations about a 2025 book closing supplemental. Now, we all know I didn't want to close the books last year, and Ann did. And well, I think this is a great opportunity to close the books, because we could close the books, and then we can put back in here the ones that are good. And there are some that are good, because when you cut this line that's $102 million of pork, it's called, I'm trying to remember what they call it. You know, they have such creative names for these. You remember the $102 million? Oh, yeah, community enhancement grants, right? That's secret pork spending. So that $102 million, we cut it. There's some things in there that are good, but there's a whole lot of things in there that are bad, that are waste, fraud, and abuse. Now all of these projects can go through heat next year. We can find out who was asking for these, what is a public benefit. Let's hope none of these are going to for-profit corporations. And we can understand what other money they're getting and what their timeline is, and then we can assess in a negotiation whether we put some of these back in. You look at the other one in the, they call it infrastructure grants. I think that one was in Leo. Where's that? Infrastructure grants. They have such creative names for all the pork spending, don't they? And I will let you know, one of the things we cut was this Yemeni thing. You saw that? That was, you know, a lot of people were asking questions about the Yemeni project, and they filed fake tax returns and all that. Well, we cut that one. We cut all kinds of things, a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse, but the infrastructure grants, $63,478,000 in pork spending gone from the Democrat trifecta. What a great job the committee did. So we cut it was probably about $165 million of Democrat pork spending from their trifecta that they shoved through in the middle of the night. No one knew what it was, and now they will be forced to do heat. And some of it, we'll probably put some of it back in. There were some good projects in there, but most of them were bad projects. And then, you know, I'm just really proud of all the efforts to eliminate these wasteful, a lot of things in here were part of the Democrats' radical left-wing environmental agenda, all kinds of things for climate resiliency and all kinds of things, really. What do they call it? They have so many creative names for it, but it's their wacko left climate agenda, defunded. So great job there. I was really proud of looking through all these DHHS pork projects. And that's another thing that, that you have to be aware of. When you look at DHHS, they have really creative names for these things, but they're all pork spending. They're all pork projects, almost everything in there. So I thought that was great. One of these is the Paladin program. I looked that up on the website this morning, and all it is a bunch of DEI. You look on their website, it's like, we will push DEI all the way to the extreme. Well, not anymore. They're not going to. You look at the attacks on our charter schools through the charter school transparency efforts, that's dead. We defunded that. The Office of Global Michigan is defunded their work projects. These were the ways that the Whitmer administration was funneling benefits to illegal aliens. We finally ended the firearm storage tip line. You remember that was a trick that they put in right at the end of their Democrat trifecta. They tied this tattletale firearm hotline to tell on people, your neighbors and friends. They shoved that in there with the school safety funding. Many of us voted for it, including me, but we said we were going to end this tip line. Well, today the House Appropriations Committee did that, and we're proud of them. It's finally dead. You see all kinds of things like with this indigent defense, $50 million lapse that they asked for all this money in the budget, and there's just $50 million they didn't spend. So I just say, if you're this late, it's the end of the fiscal year, and you haven't spent it, then instead of letting them squirrel it away into their slush funds for years and years and years, let's block it, let's put it in the general fund, and then let's force a discussion about what the best way to get value for your tax dollars is. So really proud of the committee. I'll just point out, the Flint drinking water emergency is over. Even Governor Whitmer has acknowledged that, but yet they continue to want to fund it and squirrel away money for it. That isn't happening. So there were a lot of really good things here. Really proud of the committee. The Office of Future Mobility Electrification, that's not happening. You look at that, this is how they continue to force the EVs and their green agenda on us. We're cutting the museum grants, we're cutting the symphony grants, all kinds of wasteful grants in the budget are being cut. Really, the renewable energy grants, their efforts to rewrite the federal energy code into a radical left energy code. When we were identifying their waste, fraud, and abuse, there were all kinds of wasteful IT projects. You see through this process, we cut those in DTMB, in lottery, in the gaming control board, all over, cutting these IT projects that are very wasteful. As a government, they spend billions of dollars on this IT. I think we made some good cuts there. I'm very proud of the DNR. We cut almost everyone in the DNR. That department is out of control. They've not been following through on the things that they're talking to Chairman Ken Borton about. I think this is going to give Ken Borton a real opportunity to get in there with the DNR. If they want some of this money back, then they're going to have to listen to Ken Borton, and they're going to have to follow through on some of the things they told him they were going to do through the budget. So really proud of him. You look at the Secretary of State, she continues to ask for more IT. We're not going to give her that until this is under the control of DTMB, where it should be, and where we've agreed to under the enforceable boilerplate language. School aid, there's a lot going on there. I think we cut some of the pork there. Really great. You see some of this. I think this is some of our members' favorite. They're putting the tampons in all the bathrooms, the girls' bathrooms, the boys' bathrooms. We defunded that, $1.214 million that we defunded there, so great job. All of these efforts to spy on Michiganders in the Department of Transportation, the work zone safety cameras, the school zone automated enforcement pilot study are defunded. Wonderful to see that. just all around, great job. So, and I'm just so impressed with you and your committee, the work you did today to really eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, you saw how difficult it was to eliminate that first batch of waste, fraud, and abuse, all the work over a year to cut the first $800 million of waste, fraud, and abuse. And then today, in one swoop, we saw the House Appropriations Committee eliminate hundreds of more millions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse. And I told Winnie Brinks, when I told her about this yesterday, I said, I think this is my favorite Michigan law because they came up with a law that said one chamber, through their Appropriations Committee, can cut this waste, fraud, and abuse. I said, I don't know who wrote this law, but it's a great law, and we've utilized it. And I want to point out, you know, a lot of the voters over the years have been frustrated with the Republicans because they said the Republicans never fought hard enough. You know, I think this is an example that validates that. I mean, when Granholm was governor, for the first 4 years of Whitmer as governor, this is a tool that the House and the Senate had at their disposal. Now, you know, it'll be interesting to see what Kyle comes up with. I mean, Kyle, you've done such a great job in your research, and he's the one that found that, I think it was, what, 1856, they passed 89 bills? Is that we're at 38 right now, after the 3 that were signed yesterday, so we're tracking that number very carefully to stay under the 89. But I'm interested to see your research on this. I'm told this has only been used once in the history of Michigan, which was, I think Senator Stamas used this during the COVID era for one project. You guys can look into that for me. I look forward to reading what you find. But what the Republicans should have been doing is they should have been coming in, evaluating all of these slush funds, and they should have been doing this every year. And I'm proud that we're the Republican caucus, worthy of the Fiscal Responsibility Award that we won this year, that are coming in and cutting this waste, fraud, and abuse. And we're doing it using the law that said the House can do it unilaterally, and we're going to keep looking for more waste, fraud, and abuse. I think you saw Jim DeSantis formed a new DOJ committee looking for even more waste, fraud, and abuse. We're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep standing up for the Michigan taxpayers. But I know they're all very excited to hear from you, Ann, so I'm going to let you take the floor. Great job today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate it.
doing wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. So a couple things. I want to put this in perspective about the size of the work project and the money sitting on the balance sheet that is encumbered that cannot be spent for things like when we had the federal shutdown, we were worried about people getting fed. We're worried about our seniors. We want to fix the damn roads. How about giving some money back to the taxpayers? There's $10 billion in work project money now, all right? That is almost the size of this year's general fund budget, all right? And so it is something that I believe has gotten somewhat out of control. And this is a responsibility of the Appropriations Committee, both the Senate and the House. It is, I would say it's a tool in toolbox, but it's one that we should always stay sharpened and that we went through this. The same approach that we took to the budget in looking at these work projects. If many of you sat in committee hearings very early on in the budget cycle, all of the subcommittee chairs were asking departments where they were on progress on previous year's work projects. So it really is, this is just continuing that review and trying to make sure that, we aren't just intentionally or unintentionally put these money away in slush funds. They're needed for very important things that the government does. And the way this process works, it's not like we could pick, it's a line item. You can't go in and pick a project under there that's a good one. Like it's basically, it's the whole line item. And we felt it was in the best interests of the taxpayers. That was an unnegotiated budget. If you will see, there have also been we negotiated work projects in the 26 budget process. That is really how it's done, and that's how it's been done in the past. And this is part of the trifecta budget that blew through a $9 billion surplus. And, part of that, it looks like it was really to put it in the banks for the departments. So, this is really another step in the process. We'll be continuing to monitor these work projects. I will tell you that we did reach out to departments and the state budget office when we had questions, and we were under a very tight time frame. We got the letter on Friday, November 14th, and we have 30 days to review it and vet it up or down. I think I was interviewed by some of you that said, oh my gosh, the department said they can't get this to you. They're on break. Well, we were on break also, and we managed to review it and get through it. I mean, that's our job. And I would say that that's the department's responsibility as well, to be going through with that same clear eye, looking at everything. Yes, some of these are very good projects. You were in committee, you saw that some people are upset that we just put this through, but I would say this is really, the intention is not to have any kind of discussion, no discussion or conversation, but everybody on the Appropriations Committee got a copy of the request of the recommended work projects. They too had 30 days to be asking questions, vetting, recommending, having input. And certainly, I've always had an open door to do that. Subcommittee members worked with other departments and committee members as well. So I think there is an opportunity, but some of it does take initiative. It's not just coming forth. There really is nothing to discuss. These are projects that we do feel have been vetted and put through. Like the speaker said, some are good projects that we want to put in, but it's very difficult when you have yourselves out there finding these projects, the Yemeni Center, No 990, and this is why we put heat. Gratefully, it's in statute now, and we'll follow that process, but this is why we needed the process, why it'll be so important moving forward. But I also don't think that it would have been good knowing that some of these projects that have been highlighted as bad projects for us to just sweep them under the rug and let them go forward either. And so, one more thing, Mr. Speaker, I think that we should pose for our Michigan media with our award here.
Let's do over here where, yeah, this is good. We got to get this in the Midwesterner. Look at this, it's beautiful. We're so proud of that award. Great job, Ann.
Yep, thank you. Well, I would say my name, and I would say that, we should all be very proud that we passed a fiscally responsible and sustainable budget. Every yes vote.
So, I thought it was interesting. I was asked by the press about the delay. There was a long delay today. What was interesting, I don't think these departments realized we were serious until today. And I know, Ann, you and Tom Kuhn and others had put some strict deadlines in there that we wanted their responses around Thanksgiving, and they didn't give us those responses in most cases. So I think today they realized how serious we were. And so, I know you and your committee and we spent a lot of the day reviewing these letters we were getting from departments, understanding their arguments, and ensuring that things that really were essential, were not cut. So we looked at this feedback from the departments. We made some changes today based on, some of the new information that the departments gave us. But I look at this as a negotiation, and the way this process is set up, and it is my favorite law, the law that allows the House Appropriations Committee to unilaterally kill hundreds of millions of dollars of Democrat pork and waste, fraud, and abuse. But under this law, the way it works is when they send you the letter, first of all, they do it over the holiday break. I mean, there would be no way for Joe Tate to have done this his first year as Speaker because they were already adjourned by now. Okay, they were sine die. And so the Democrats send the letter during sine die. There's nothing the legislature can do because once they send the letter, and they always send it over hunting break when they know the legislators aren't in. And then a lot of times, especially when the Democrats were there was no session around this time of year. There's no time for the legislature to reject it. So what Ann did in the committee is we rejected much of it. And now it's instead of the deck being stacked on us, now we'll look through this under our timeline with the projects being required to follow the new law of the land HEAT, the Hall Ethics, Accountability, and Transparency Plan, which requires the disclosure in the 45 days before a budget bill goes through. So that'll give us all time to evaluate these projects, to put the good ones back in and cut the bad ones, and we'll see. But that's a much better way to do it, where we can do it under our timeline. And in that scenario, I think the departments will be much more accommodating than they were under this process. So we'll open it up to questions if there are any. I think we probably answered a lot of it, but if there are any questions, go ahead. So, yeah, Beth.
Can you explain how that meeting today was transparent?
You were in the meeting. I don't understand the question. I mean, did you guys see the list that of all the work projects, or does the department send that to everyone, or I don't know how that works.
That is something, yeah, that's the list that's outside the meeting room, was passed
Yeah.
out to all the members at the meeting.
Is there a department?
full-
Because so the department sends us a letter. They sent that to us, 30 days ago, or?
Yeah, so the department,
wanna say
yeah. So the department has 45 days after the fiscal year ends to send us this recommendation, and then we have 30 days to act. All right, that state budget office request, that recommendation, it actually gets sent to a set list of people, appropriations committee members, and it's also posted on the state budget office website as well.
Yeah.
And so the list of all of their recommendations has been public for a very, very long time.
Right.
And it was directly sent to all of us.
Yep, and then what we do is we're cutting spending, so I think that's fine. I mean, we're cutting spending. Now, if some of these things are negotiated as part of a new deal, they'll follow the new law of the land heat, the Hall Ethics, Accountability, and Transparency Plan, and that will be very transparent. But remember, these were projects that the Democrats snuck in the middle of the night in their budget that are now going to be following heat. So you guys should actually be happy about that, because you're going to have a lot more time to review these before they're spent. This process, what they do is they work project it. You guys don't even know they're work projecting it, and then the legislature does nothing and it goes into the slush funds. We blocked a lot of it, and then you guys will have an opportunity, and the people, to review this before new money is spent.
So I understand it, now that you've rejected this funding, it doesn't disappear, it goes into the general fund.
Yeah,
Is
and
that-
in some cases, a restricted fund.
And so
yeah.
you're gonna use this now as a tool to negotiate maybe a supplemental by
Exactly.
the end of this year, or?
Well, the end of there'll be a book closing, a 25 book closing sometime next year, so.
Use this as a negotiating tool now.
Exactly, so you cut it, and then they can come in, they can justify the spending. If they want pork, it's gotta go through heat. So this is a way to take their secret spending, reject it, and then bring it all out into the open next year. So, I would just say, a supplemental, you won't be able to do it in January, because under the new law, heat, you have to give 45 days. So we'll have to have a website, they'll have to post the pork spending, and then it'll have to sit at least 45 days in order for them to be considered. And that'll give us all an opportunity to look at what they're considering. And I'm really looking forward with Ann to look into some of this pork spending and figure out who's it going to, what's the public benefit, who's going to put their name on it. This is going to be a really exciting opportunity, and then it'll give us a chance to negotiate with the departments, because basically, once they work project the money, we can't do anything about it. But we can negotiate how they're going to spend this money instead of putting it into a slush fund where it sits forever. So, this is really us reasserting that balance of power between the legislature and the governor. So we're, it's a real sharp idea that Ann had, and she's been working on this for a lot of years, and I backed her 100%, and you saw our committee support it. But on the negotiation, it'll be very transparent, and I think you guys will really enjoy being able to cover that. Did you have something, Elena? Yeah.
So, who was involved in the discussions of what to cut, and when did those discussions begin?
You want to talk about that? Sure.
So I will tell you, there were a lot of people involved in the discussions. Number one, as soon as we got the memo, I asked all of the subcommittee chairs to go through their individual budgets and make recommendations, all right? I went through it also, sat with fiscal, had conversations with the state budget office, various people in some departments, colleagues, subcommittee chairs, and then as a group, the Appropriations Committee members, the speaker, myself, our budget staff. We had a lot of conversation. This has not been done in a vacuum. And there are some times that a subcommittee chair may be looking at it through their lens and looking at it, whereas I'm looking at it, from a different perspective, and then speaker is looking at it from yet another one. And that is how we get to the end, get a good product, in my opinion, is that everybody weigh in. We're looking at it for different reasons. So we have been involved, involved a lot of people.
To me, like how the work projects got approved in the first place, where people were having conversations behind closed doors, subcommittees were talked to, departments were talked to, and then the budget is passed and they're in there.
Well, I will tell you that one of the things that I do hope that I can reform while I am here, and hopefully as a PROPS chair, is I think the whole work project process has to be overhauled. I don't think that we should be putting these in and authorizing for 1 year plus 4 more. I really would like to see it just 1 year, 24 months. And why? Things change over time. I mean, that's a lot of time to keep something on. So we may be negotiating, like even in this year's budget, and we say, okay, authorization for 4 years. A lot can happen where you might have to. Programs need to change. So I just think that they have the opportunity in a little bit more closer perspective by law, and the work projects would also be to our advantage.
So maybe the work project concept in general needs to be more transparent, because in this cutting, there weren't a lot of public meetings involved here either.
Well, I don't know that it's a transparent, we're kind of getting into this is it transparent, is it not? I look at this more as kind of like a homework project, right? It is something that, somebody has done their work, you have a budget, and now you're seeing, did you make progress? You're checking the papers. Did they do what they were supposed to?
Sure, yep. We were just talking about how, these work projects were put in by the Dem trifecta in the middle of the night, nobody knew, and they were there. It kind of seems like in taking them out, it's just been the reverse of that process. So I guess, is that criticism of how they ended up in the budget fair when they come out of the budget in the same way?
Well, I would say if you look at the 26 budget, and that we were able to have, kind of a childlike form of heat. The House was committed to the transparency process. At the end, we got in statute, and in the end, through the process, we also did get the Senate to be a little bit more public and more transparent on it, right? And so we see that. In the 26 budget, you'll see that we did negotiate, we did have conversations about work projects and things that we thought would take longer than just the budget year, all right? But this is a budget, this is 25 budget that was not negotiated. There were no conversations between, the House, with Republicans in the House and or the Senate for that matter. And this was something we saw that there was a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, to blow through $9 billion in accessory spending is a lot. It took us a while to get through that. And this is where we felt. I think that when we go back through this process, there are some really good things that were funded. And no, it's not easy to say no to those. I hope that we can work to get those back. All right. But I think there are probably a lot of buyer's remorse on some of those projects that were in there, that now we've shed the light on some of them, and people say, that's not quite as important to me. Right. I think if you look at the list, the way the transparency was under the last budget cycle is, yes, transparent in that the sponsor had to come forth by December of the year of the budget starting. So the budget's adopted by October 1, the sponsor has to come forth by December 31, and if they don't, it falls to be the department's project. That's not real transparency. So some of it we will never know, and that's, again, the benefit of the HEAT project. And so I think we're going to see, what we're going to see is maybe there'll be some buyer's remorse in this.
Oh, yeah, and what a great job you did there explaining it. But I'll just say, again, we're cutting spending. They're the ones trying to sneak through spending. And what we were doing is just saying, hey, we're looking out for the people of Michigan. We're going to block this. We're going to bring it out into the open next year, and there's going to be a lot of transparency on the spending. Right, but I think when you guys research the history of these work projects, you'll see this was this is something that's really exploded under Governor Whitmer, the amount of money and the number of projects. And really, the projects should end at the end of the fiscal year. Okay, what we're talking about is things where they didn't spend it in that year, and they're trying to figure out how to keep the money for 4 more years after the money was supposed to go away. And what we're saying is, we're not going to let you just do that anymore. We're going to block some of it, and then we're going to negotiate, and we're going to find a better public use for that money. That's what we're doing. Now, there were some things that we let go through because it made sense, and I get that, but that would have been happening anyway. You guys probably don't even know about this process, right? I mean, we're teaching you about this process in many cases. And then one thing too, when we're talking about the numbers on this, I just want to point out that when we're talking about the numbers on this, so the Make It in Michigan Fund is about $150 million. When that officially lapses, that will go to the general fund. So right now, when you see the numbers, what they're going to say is, I think it's 644 million gross, 350 million GF. Very soon, that will be showing 500 million GF. So what we really did is we freed up another 500 million general fund that we can then go and negotiate next year, a book closing supplemental. And we have a budget, 500 million, right? We're not going to go over that. And we'll have a debate, a public debate under the elements in the new law heat, where we discuss out in the open how to spend that 500 million instead of this way. Yeah, go ahead, Travers.
What message are you intending to send to the bureaucracy? And with what you just did, would you like to see this money, any of this money returned to the taxpayers in the form of a tax cut?
Yeah, I mean, if it's possible to negotiate tax reform with this, that'd be great. I think with Governor Whitmer, that's a little harder. But we did it before, right? We got her to agree to no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security. As we're approaching the new year, we're looking at property tax reform and this idea of a modern Proposal A, where we pit 2 proposals forward for the people to choose about property tax relief. There's a lot of things we're talking about giving relief to people, and having this money will give us the opportunity to look at tax relief, and then setting better priorities. So we want to ensure that this funding goes to things that are better used than this climate resiliency and all kinds of things. I said, the Office of Global Michigan, right? We don't want to do that. I mean, the Secretary of State is going to waste her, she's going to waste her IT money, so we want to see that. So I would kind of break it up into maybe 2 things. Some of it is putting more guardrails on the department to ensure that if we give the money back to the departments, that they spend it better, and they spend it the way we want them to spend it. And the second thing is blocking a lot of these wasteful pork spending projects, grant programs, things that the Democrats did, like, for example, the Charter School Transparency Database was an attempt to really eliminate charter schools and make it so burdensome on charter schools that they kind of go out of existence. So the opportunity to block efforts like that, I think, was important. I mean, this Lake Michigan circuit was their attempt to build EV chargers using your tax dollars all over the west coast of Michigan. We blocked that. So there's some things like that that are clearly a waste of taxpayer dollars that we're getting rid of. And then there are other things that we'll negotiate back into the budget. I mean, the symphony grants are a waste. The Office of Global Michigan was a waste. The community museum grants is a waste. And all of the pork spending, it's $165 million of Democrat pork spending that we killed that now we're going to have an opportunity to find a better use for. Yeah, go ahead, Simon.
I got a couple of questions. I'm curious, what the precedent being set here is. We're a politically competitive state. We see the control of the legislature kind of go back and forth over the past few years. With the actions taken here today, what's to not send us into sort of a tit for tat, where each time the legislature flips control, you see an appropriation committee ripping up the work prior to the legislature?
And I thought thought a lot about that. So, when I talked to Brinks yesterday and I gave her a heads up what we were doing, I told her, I said, you guys didn't negotiate with any Republicans. This was a Democrat trifecta, right? It was Tate and Brinks and the governor. I would contrast that with the recent budget we just passed, where, in order to get that budget passed, there were House Democrats, House Republicans, Senate Democrats, Senate Republicans, all involved in the conversation, all getting wins. That's a different kind of budget than this very partisan Democrat budget that passed, where, no one in our caucus had any say. Contrast that with this time, where everyone was informed of what was going on, whether it was through Governor Whitmer or through me. Everyone was represented in those negotiations, and that's why we came up with a much better budget.
Majority party controlling one chamber's appropriations committee gets a say as to whether that work project funding can continue.
We're just following it.
And I'm curious, you said that the community museum grants were a waste. Is
Yeah,
that-
that's waste.
You think
Yeah,
that the
that's waste.
funding for the Holocaust Memorial Museum was wasted?
Well, that's not the community museum grants. That's a line item in the pork spending, and that's tied to hundreds of millions of dollars of other pork spending. So you look at that line, it's there's $102 million tied in that line. And so the question you have to ask yourself, if you look at one of those, there's a Jewish Federation security line, there's a Holocaust Museum line. But then there are these other lines, like the Yemeni line, where they're committing tax fraud and they're getting the money. And there's, all kinds of other projects that were not vetted through HEAT that we, and you can't, the way it works is like on a line like that, you can't cherry pick. You got to cut it all. And then we have a negotiation and some of it might get back in. But I prefer that approach where you're allocating the money to a specific museum, and we can look and we can say, okay, why? What is the benefit to the public? Who's the sponsor? As opposed to these broader grants where you give the department the discretion. When we started looking into how the department divvies out these grants, we just said, it doesn't make a lot of sense. That's how, when we start talking about some of the projects we were trying to defund in the budget, the barbershop quartets and all that are getting funded through the arts and culture grants. I mean, if there's a important community event that they want to fund, then the politicians should put their name on it, and they should put it in the budget. Instead, that arts and culture grants, they hand out thousands of grants, like 30,000 a pop. What is that going to do? 10,000 here, 12,000 here, 15,000 here. Well, were there two different puppet art ones? There's like dozens and dozens of barbershop quartets. I'd rather they give $1 million to the Grand Rapids Art Museum or maybe the Holocaust Museum than give 80 grants out to all these different glass-blowing associations that we don't even know what the hell the use is. And so that's where, I think going through HEAT, we'll see some museums get funded, but they're not going to be by the department.
What would you say, some of these projects, if they're like capital outlay projects, or even IT systems, they take several years to implement or to put in place. If you're saying this is the only funding you get for this year, you have to do it all by that year, or for NDOT, if they're waiting for steel prices or asphalt prices to go up or down to buy, if you're containing them to within a year, I guess, how would you respond to why you're taking that flexibility?
I have views on that. It seems like you wanted to jump in, so why don't you go first, Dan?
Okay, well, I would say, we have to look at these in two different contexts, I think, right? We're looking at 25 work projects where we had no participation in. You will see in the 26 budget, there are things that we did negotiate. You have the dialogue that these are projects that are going to take longer than 1 year, and you incorporate that as a work project right in the budget versus coming back later on these. You have some of these where maybe it was a $2 million appropriation and 1.6 has been spent. So it's like 75%, it's almost done, but the department's hanging on to the money. right? Like, they should just, I think, willingly and easily give that up, right? They're trying, sometimes just make these excuses when you ask them. But, you know, there has to be some dialogue that goes on. But when we see those projects, we know some of them are multi-year. And you incorporate the work project right in the budget when you add it in.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of these, right? It's a $2 million line and they spend 1.92 and then they try to pocket the rest. And you're like, yeah, you could give that back to the general fund. You know, you can give that back. And they do that all over the place, and that's how they build these big slush funds. So you see a lot like that where maybe the politician asked for $2 million in pork and they didn't need the $2 million. The department doesn't give that money up. They keep it forever. And that's how they build these $6 billion slush funds. Then you just have the ones where maybe they weren't good ideas, and that's why the department's not spending the money. I think there's quite a few of those. Yeah, go ahead, Simon.
Takeaway that sort of some of the affected parties have here is that if there is a budgetary line and they receive funding for something, that's work project funding, and they think that executing that is going to take more than 4 or 5 fiscal years, that they shouldn't view that funding as a sure thing, unless it's written into as a statutory program.
Yeah, so in our research, we found that the departments write into these contracts kind of an out clause for these situations. You know what I mean? So most of these contracts will say, you know, in the event that the legislature pulls this money, the contract is null. So, you know, that was something we looked at to understand this as we've been working on it. So they sign contracts. This is a risk of the contract, and you know, we'll keep. I mean, we're gonna, you know, we'll put some of them back in, but I don't see a lot of hope for the Michigan Climate Investment Fund. That $10 million, I don't see that going back, but we'll see.
Actually, all the work projects, because we have, like, say, the community enhancement grants here as a line item. Can we get like all of the grants?
It was on the state budget office.
Yeah, so the state budget office has produced a memo of all of the work, their recommendations. And then now we have this disapprove list, and
Yeah, we'll work with you
yeah,
on that.
yeah,
I don't know what
yeah.
all the rules are, but she
It's-
tells me it's on their
Yeah.
website.
And, you know, I would say also that this is an opportunity for oversight. Like, if there is a problem, all right, why isn't a contract being executed? Why is it taking 11 months? I mean, I think we want to look back and say, like, what's the problem here? Is there a problem really with the transaction between the recipient? Is it an administrative problem? And, you know, we did try to look at this. It wasn't just like, nope, that's a bad one, this is one. Like, in looking at that, was the fault of the applicant. But again, like the speaker said, and I've also said, it's, you know, if it is a line item, it's everything that's in there that still doesn't have money expended. And that's the unfortunate thing, because some are very good.
Yeah, they snuck that RX Kids in there, but it's kind of interesting. When I was looking at this, I'm going to find it. There's a bunch of money from last year they didn't spend on RX Kids. Kind of interesting. And so that was part of this too, which I really applaud the committee as they did that. I'm looking for it on here, but
2 million now.
yeah, right here. 18,489,200 under the prenatal and infant support program, which is RX Kids. So we cut that. They got 250 million apparently snuck in the last budget, but yet they didn't spend 18 million. Kind of interesting. Be interesting to see how much of that 250 million they don't spend. Yeah, Beth.
So you're moving the EMR process from 50% upfront payment to a reimbursement basis. That arguably will take longer to disperse the funds than we do an upfront payment. So you're making that change, and you're saying you guys have to spend all this money in a year.
Well, first of all, thank you for acknowledging that.
Well, it's important.
That might be the first time a reporter's acknowledged that, and that's a very significant part of HEAT.
It's not part of your law.
Oh, it's part of
The
HEAT.
reimbursement basis, it's in the boilerplate, it's not part of the law.
Yeah, it's part of HEAT. So we put it in there that they have to reimburse, which I think is going to be really good, because in the past, they'd spend the money, they'd give them the money, and they'd go like this, And then we'd find problems, and Quentin Messer would say, oh, they have the money, there's nothing we can do. That was really important that now, under heat, they have to either ask the department to approve it, or they have to seek reimbursement, and that's our way of ensuring that the money is spent responsibly and there are not unqualified expenses. So that would prevent in the future, you know, the first class airplane tickets and the coffee maker, the $5,000 coffee maker, and those examples, because you would hope when they come to the department would block those things. And because they spend the money, but they need the department to sign off. And we thought that was a really positive change, and I appreciate you bringing that up. So we'll see, you know, as we move forward, we'll see what happens. But what was in front of us here was this list that didn't go through heat, that didn't have the support of us, and we weren't included in. And we saw a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse, and we said, we're going to cut it, we're going to force a negotiation, and we're going to get better use for your tax dollars. So I couldn't be more happy with the committee or you, Chair Bollin. You did a great job.
I just want to add on to that, like, Beth, we actually disapproved a little over 600 million, but almost 2 billion went through as work projects.
On a different topic.
Okay, sure.
The House Democrats have put out a package of bills regarding vaccination, including letting the Department of Health and Human Services issue recommendations that can be followed statewide over the federal recommendations as it comes to vaccinating young children for hepatitis B and so forth. Is that something that you could see yourself supporting or moving in any way?
Yeah, I don't know the details on that, but I know those bills came forward, and I think we referred them to government operations today. So, you know, when things go to government operations, you get the fun. Are they there to pass quickly? Are they there to die? Or are they legitimate government operations? You know, Brian Begole will be looking at that, but my instinct is you're not going to be seeing a lot of movement on this. Yeah, go ahead, Travers.
On a separate topic as well, have you seen any indication that the Senate Democrats or Whitmer, they're having second thoughts about removing the local control for the data centers, because those projects don't seem to be going very well?
Oh, you're right, yeah, and you know, you hear from a lot of people and they say, like if the Public Service Commission approves this data center in the Ann Arbor area that you know, that Stephen Ross is involved in. You know, Jocelyn Benson's husband is the person that's working to force that to happen. Do we trust Jocelyn Benson, if she's governor, to ensure that that company is not causing an increase in rates for all of the ratepayers of Michigan? I don't trust her. I mean, when her husband is involved in that deal. And that's just one of the problems with that deal. I mean, you look at these things, and there's just a lot of questions about the data centers with their the significant. You know, I talked to a few years ago DTE, and I think just one of these was potentially up to 10% of their entire load, their whole capacity. So these are big things. There's a lot of them potentially coming to Michigan, and I really think that this Public Service Commission needs to do their due diligence to ensure that this doesn't lead to a rate increase for the people of Michigan, because I don't trust the Whitmer administration, and I especially am unsure whether I can trust a future governor given this conflict of interest that Jocelyn Benson has. So they really should take their time. That's a great question. I don't know. I haven't asked the governor or Brinks what they think. But, you know, I think a lot of people are taking a second look. Now, I voted no on the law to give a tax benefit to the data centers because there's a lot of reasons why Michigan is a place that data centers want to be: the temperature, the access to water, there's a lot of land. We didn't have to give them huge tax breaks. I think that we shouldn't be giving big tax breaks for empty buildings with 35 people. That's just my opinion. So I voted no. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead. Welcome. This is our friend from the Michigan Advance. What's your name again? Catherine.
Yeah.
Hey, how's your first, what has it been, about 2 months?
Yeah, just a
Do you
little.
like Michigan?
Yeah.
Good. Good. What?
Senators Edmund and Jennifer were introduced legislation in the Senate to create a bicameral oversight committee.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if you're in support of a proposal like that, or if you have any thoughts on that legislation.
Yeah, well, I know this is an idea that very partisan Democrat from the Levin Center has been pushing for a long time. I was chair of the Oversight Committee in the House, and really, I think this was the most robust oversight you'd ever seen. There were a lot of public acts that came from that time. We went hard at the Department of Health and Human Services, Child Protective Services. We did a lot for cybersecurity. They called it the Michigan Civilian Cyber Corps. That was a big one. We did a lot there. There were a lot of things we did in that committee. And now I'm really proud of the work that Jay DeBoyer's doing and the subcommittees. You know, I think Kyle really saw something there when he pointed out the work of Jason Wolford and the subcommittee that he chairs that is looking into all the waste, fraud, and abuse in the welfare system, and push the department to come up with a secure chip card in order to ensure that there's less waste, fraud, and abuse in the SNAP program and the food stamps. And that's important because our state is going to be fined by the federal government, and they should be. If they're paying out hundreds of millions of dollars of fraud, they should be fined because the state needs to get it under control, and Jason Wolford's helping us do that. So I think as you look at the oversight we've put in place, it's working, and I think that's the right approach. So I built a robust committee, and they're working really hard to get to the bottom of this. I think that's a better approach, and I have a lot of respect for Ed McBroom. When I became oversight chair, he was one of the people that I talked to because he was the House Oversight Chair before me, a few years before me. And I have a lot of respect for him, but I think this is a better way to do oversight. Any other questions? All right, well, I hope we gave you something to write about, but we'll see. We aspire to do that every week, and I apologize I wasn't here last week. I know you guys had to really reach for some stories, but we're back and we're giving you some stories. So I hope you enjoy it. Hopefully you come up with something, and just be proud of this Appropriations Committee finally cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. Thank you. All right.